This is a pyrometric cone. It's made out of clay, and it's made out of a blend of clay that's designed to start melting at a certain temperature. So we used to use something that looks a lot like this in our kilns to turn the kiln off when it reached a certain temperature. That was back before the advent of digital controllers. And so there would be a little prong with a lever on top of it, and you would insert that cone, and the lever on top would come down when that cone started to bend, and that would shut the kiln off. We don't have to rely on those anymore because we have digital controllers that have thermocouples that measure the temperature inside, and when it reaches that temperature, the kiln will shut off automatically. But some people still like to use these. You could use these as what is called a witness cone. Usually if you're doing a witness cone in your kiln, you're gonna get a cone that you want to reach, you're gonna get a cone a number above that, and a cone a number below that, and you're just gonna stick them on a piece of clay and line the three up. And when you finish your firing, you can take a look at those witness cones, and the one that was a cone below what you're firing to should be melted over kind of like that. The one that you're firing to should be bent slightly, and the one that's a cone number above what you were supposed to reach is still going to be straight. So that's just a way that you can check to make sure that your kiln is firing to the correct temperature and shutting off at the right time. Another thing that I wanted to show you, and this is really hard to see, but find yourself an Orton cone chart, and some things that are a little bit confusing about cone numbers will become more clear if you take a look at one of these charts. When I was talking about low fire clay, I mentioned cone 04, 06, 05. That O is super, super important, because in the middle of the cone chart is cone 0 or cone 1. And then as the temperature gets lower, it starts with 01, 02, 03, 04, 05, 06, down to cone 017. So as the number gets larger with a 0 in front of it, the temperature actually gets cooler. So cone 04 is hotter than cone 06. But once you get above that cone 1, cone 2, cone 3, cone 5, cone 10, as the number gets larger, the heat also increases, or the temperature gets hotter. And that makes a lot more sense. So with people just starting out with pottery, when you talk about cone 04 being hotter than cone 06, it's like, that doesn't make any sense because 4 is smaller than 6. So why is the temperature hotter? That's why, because the cone chart, for whatever reason, starts in the center with 0. And then as it goes down in temperature, it's 01, 02, 03, and so on. So that would hopefully explain a little bit why when we talk about low fire clay, we're talking about cone 04. And when we're talking about mid fire clay, we're talking about cone 5 and cone 6. So when you're programming your kiln, remember that puddle that I told you this would turn into if you fired it too hot? Be sure you're programming it to 04, not cone 4. Because if you program it to cone 4, it's going to be way too hot for that low fire clay, and you're going to end up with a mess. So that wraps up our little session on the different types of clay and why we have different types of clay and what they're used for. One thing that we haven't really talked about is vitrification, or a fully vitrified clay. What that means is that the clay has been fired to the temperature that it reaches full maturity. All the moisture has been taken out. The clay molecules get closer together and become water impervious and much stronger. And that's one of the reasons that you see clay shrink in the kiln the first time you fire it, and then the second time you fire it, because you're firing to your bisque temperature, which is usually 04, 05 the first time. Then you put glaze on it, and if it's a mid-fire clay, then you might fire it at 2250. If it's a high-fire clay, you might fire at 2350, and more of that moisture is going to be taken out of the clay. The molecules and the particles in the clay are going to come tighter and more close together and more water impermeable, and so that piece is going to shrink. Some porcelain clays shrink up to 12%, so you start out with a piece that's this tall and end up with a piece that's that tall. But you want to be sure that you're getting your clay and your glaze to the right temperature. And so these cone numbers that we've been talking about are really important for ceramic artists, because that's how we gauge what temperature we're going to go to. If you get really involved and start working with glazes like I showed you before, like something like this, the crystalline glazes, then you're going to start writing your own programs, and you're going to be very, very specific about the temperatures that you get to. But for most ceramic artists, you're going to fire to a cone, and it's going to be based on the type of clay you're using and the type of glaze you're applying. So you want to make sure that you're getting a kiln that's going to match the clay and the glaze that you're using. And maybe you want to think ahead and think, well, I'm using mid-fire clay right now, but I might want to use porcelain someday and kind of try that out. So get yourself a kiln that will fire to 2350. It's going to do the mid-fire work great, but then you always have the opportunity to experiment with other types of clays in the future.